Hey guys, and welcome to the Two Sides of Darkness tag. I was tagged to this tag by the original creator, which is Lucy over at Books and Brushes. I will link her original video down below, so please make sure you go and check that out. Now, the Two Sides of Darkness tag is a tag where you get prompts, and for every prompt you have to give two books. One that you have read and one that is anticipated for you. So, I struggled with it, but I have answers and I will take you through it as we go along. So the first prompt is a book that has dark in the cover. Now I struggled with this because I think originally the game is you pick books that you love with dark in the cover, and I haven't actually read that many, if any, but I have read this year one book with dark on the cover, and that was Disney After Dark by Ridley Pearson. I wasn't the biggest fan of this, to be honest. It is part of the Kingdom Keepers series. I was gifted a copy by Robbie from Andy's Nose Stuck in a Book, and I did this as a buddy read with him. He said it is one of his favourite series. I gave the book a 2-star because I really just didn't like it. It was perfect on paper. It was a Disney book featuring people battling Disney villains. I should have loved it. I just didn't. But this book features some young kids that become workers for Disney. Like, they work as holographs. They're actors that get made into holographs. And when they go to sleep, they wake up in the body of these holographs. And they have to stop the evil creatures of Disneyland taking over the park and eventually the world. And the reading experience was good. It just was not my cup of tea, to be honest, but it was a good book. And for a book that I have that is highly anticipated, I chose Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, which is the third and final book in the Dark Artifices trilogy. I was just very recently gifted this for my birthday from the amazing Jade from paperback to hardback. And this is really highly anticipated because everyone keeps telling me how much love they have for the Dark Artifices. And I'm so excited to get there. I've just finished The Mortal Instruments. I have a vlog of my final reading experience coming soon. And then I'm moving on to some of the short stories, then moving on to the Dark Artifices. So I'm really excited to get to this one. It is very highly anticipated, and I think that cover is absolutely stunning. All right. Next is a book that I have read with the darkest or prettiest cover, and I chose Idle Hands by Cassandra Wynne-Walker. I love this cover. It's actually the reason I requested this book on NetGalley. It was just because I thought the cover was beautiful. Now, this book is about a character in it who has had many names. She's recently called Ella, but people have also known her as the Devil. And basically the story follows a woman who makes some decisions for her and her family. They don't turn out so well, and she is offered the chance to change history. She's offered the chance to go back as though things never changed. And it's all about the devil giving these people choices, and people ruin their own lives depending on the choices they make. And that's what it's about. It's a great story. It was such an easy read. I absolutely loved it. Yeah, 5-star read. One of the best reads of the year for me. Really good. Then, for a dark and pretty cover, I chose another recent book that I've just got, and that is Middle Game by Shauna Maguire. I think this is just so dark and eerie because of how plain and simple it is. It just creeps me out looking at it, and I sit here to do my reading, and this book is usually right here staring me in the face. So, like, every now and again my eyes just keep like glancing over to it, and it creeps me out. But I'm really excited to read this, and I think as well the fact that it is right on the end staring at me all the time is another reason why I really want to read this. But this was gifted to me by Kat from Brews and Reviews for my birthday, and I think I'm going to be picking it up really soon because I just can't stop staring at it. Next was one I really struggled with, and that is a book with a hooded figure on the cover. I struggled so much for this one, and instead of me just saying I've never read one, because I typically associate hooded figures on the covers as fantasy, I really struggled. I couldn't think of one for this I couldn't think of one for any sort of book I'd read. So in the end, I don't have one for that one, sadly. But one that is highly anticipated. I cheated. This book, before you judge me, before I show you, does not feature a hooded figure, but it features a character whose face is obscured by something that could potentially be a hood. But it's not. It's a hat. I chose Wicked. This is highly anticipated. I love the musical. I've also said that I'm really scared to read this book because I love the musical so much. I'm scared that this will disappoint. I don't think it will, but I'm scared it might. And this is as close as I could get to a character with a hooded, with a hood. She has a hat. You can't see her eyes. She's hooded in some way. Sigh. Then the next prompt is a book that shows the dark struggles of racism or oppression. Now, I could only think of one book when it comes to racism because of the subtlety of how racism is approached. And that is the book Queenie by CANDICE CARTY-WILLIAMS. This book is very subtle with its racism. The characters in it don't directly come out and act in a racist manner. It's very much just a casual racism kind of setting. And that was the scariest thing of all reading that for me. I found that to be so relatable and worrying because things that people were saying that were very obviously racist have been said in my life. I have seen people say these things and it's always just passed off as casual and it's a joke and it doesn't really mean anything. Unless someone's coming out and saying extremely racist things, it doesn't matter. And that's how it's been portrayed in society, and that's how it was kind of portrayed in the book. But having a character who is the victim of this racism shows that no amount of casual attitude makes up for it or excuses it. And I thought it was such a good way to tackle that because it wasn't tackling the typical things associated with racism. It wasn't tackling the typical attitudes and behaviours. It was tackling the subtlety. And that is what I love because I think people perhaps don't consider the subtlety of racism as much as they do with the outright obvious racism. And for a book that is highly anticipated for me, I picked Ghost Boys. This book is, I don't really know what it's about. I heard about it from Kaz over at Cats and Camera, and I've wanted a copy of it really ever since. This book, I think, features a character in it who is black and is shot and killed by the police. He's a child, and I think the book is actually a middle grade, and it's about him, I think, as a ghost. And the themes of that book explore the racial injustice when it comes to police. And I think the book explores all of that themes, and it sounds like such a really interesting and important book for us all to read, especially if it is a middle grade, because then that's so important for young children to read and understand as well. And it's very highly anticipated, and I really can't wait to read that book. Next is a book that features duplicity, dark characters, and arcs. So that is a book that features morally grey characters, character arcs, redemptions, origin stories, all sort of things like that. And for that, I chose a book that is quite disliked in the book community, but I really loved it. And that is The Ballad of Sunburned Snakes. This book follows the origin story of President Snow before the Hunger Games. This is set during the 10th annual Hunger Games, and a lot of people haven't liked this book. Whereas when I read it, I really enjoyed it. And one of the things I absolutely loved about it was the fact that it didn't excuse Snow's actions. It didn't make us fall in love with him. It didn't make us understand why he became so evil. It was just an origin story showing that he had these sociopathic, psychopathic, horrible tendencies anyway. And really, the games just kind of brought it out more and showed him that that was the path he wanted to go down. And that is what I loved about that book. It didn't excuse anything. It was just very much an insight into the sick and twisted mind of the character and how that developed over time. I understand why people don't like it, but I really did enjoy this book. I loved it. Next, I picked a book that I don't think the character's morally grey. Maybe they might be. Everyone seems to love it. And I've picked Sweet Pea by C.J. Skuse. This book features the main character Rhiannon, who is a serial killer. And I think a lot of people love Rhiannon's character, but she's a serial killer. And people don't usually love those two things together. So I've kind of put her in a morally grey thing because I think she's a serial killer. She's not exactly a nice person, but people love her anyway and love her as a character. So maybe she's morally grey. Maybe she's just interpreted as morally grey. I don't know, but this is what I went with. The next prompt is a book that features a dark alternative universe. For a book I've read, one that I read very recently, I read City of Heavenly Fire. Because this book features not so much an alternate universe, the characters have to go into a demon realm and it features that realm, and we learn a lot about that, and the characters spend quite a bit of time in that realm. And I really loved that. I love seeing how that world was developed and how the characters thought of that world in comparison to their world. It was really good, and I love this story. This is the final book in the Mortal Instruments series, in case anyone does not know, so I can't really tell you too much about this because it is the final book. Then for a book that is highly anticipated, I chose The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This is really highly anticipated for me. This is a book with many alternate universes, and you're allowed to travel to any of them on the condition that your doppelganger and your person in that other reality is already dead. You cannot have two people existing in the same universe. And I think this story features a girl who, I think there's 380 universes, and this girl is dead in all of them except 8. And she ends up going to one universe where she is still alive, and there are 2 of them there. And that is pretty much all I know. That's all I want to know. I'm excited to just read it and go in blind. Very highly anticipated, and it does feature alternative universes. Next is a book that features a dark bullying theme. Now, I struggled with this one, but one of the books I picked was Pretty Little Liars by Sarah Shepard. I read this book years ago. I don't even fully remember it. I remember not enjoying it as much as the TV show, that's as much as I know. But it does feature quite heavily bullying. For starters, our main characters are bullied by a person known as A, and bullied into doing things because their secrets will be revealed if not, as well as the fact that they have all suffered at the hands of someone they considered their best friend, Alison, before she eventually disappeared and is suspected to be murdered. Then for a highly anticipated book, I don't know if this book features bullying, but it's a book set in a school. Typically that encompasses some sort of bullying, and I went for All Our Twisted Secrets by Diana Urban. This one is quite highly anticipated for me. As far as I'm aware, this book is about people who are locked in a room. They've all done something. They all have to try and figure out what they've done and how to escape. And I think there's something like there's a syringe in there and they have to choose which one of them dies. I think that's what it's about. There are people locked in a room and they have to decide amongst each other which one of the group dies. The rest of them can survive. I think that's what it's about. Sounds really interesting. Typically though, set in a high school, there is probably some sort of bullying element to that. I don't know though, I cheated a little bit, but it's fine. The next prompt is a book that features depression. Now, I picked a book called The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. This is a book I've mentioned a few times. This book is not centered on depression. This book features 2 characters who adopt a child that has been abused, and there is problems with the child. She is not how she first appears, and there's a lot of problematic moments with the child. And one of the main characters experiences a lot of emotions because of this relationship with the child. And I think elements of depression come into that. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to give anything away for anyone that wants to read the book, but the character that I'm talking about goes through quite a lot of emotional feelings. Depression is part of that. And for a book that is highly anticipated, I chose Dear Evan Hansen. I don't know, again, if this features depression, but this is a book all about mental health and suicide and the impact that has on people, and I feel as though depression will feature quite heavily in a book such as this, so I chose this book. Next is a book about the mystery of death or immortality, and I chose In an Instant by Suzanne Redfern. Sorry for the ridiculous change of camera angle. I got really uncomfortable on the floor and I had to move, but I'm already 18 minutes into filming this before editing and I was not doing it all again. The next prompt is a book that features the mystery of death or immortality, and I chose In an Instant by Suzanne Redfern. This story is one that I read a while ago, and it features a young girl called Finn who loses her life in a car accident, and she is stuck as a spirit watching her family deal with the aftermath of the accident. And I would like to refer to this as The Lovely Bones done right, because it features the same premise of a character who is stuck in the spirit realm watching her family move on after the events of their death, but it was actually done well. This is a really good story because it really causes you to question what happens after you die. Do you move on? Is there anything else? Do you end up as a spirit watching your family deal with it? And it really explores death and what happens afterwards, and I really loved that story. And for an anticipated book, I feel as though it's kind of obvious to discuss about death and immortality, I chose The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is a book about a girl that makes a deal with the devil to live forever, but the condition of that is nobody will ever remember her existence. Until one day, someone does. And that's all I know, that's all I want to know. Again, I like going into books blind, that's what I'm doing. Then for the 10th prompt, it was a book that features a dark monster. For this, I chose The Outsider by Stephen King, but it features something I would class as a very dark and evil monster. Oh, didn't say anything about this. This is a story about a young boy has been brutally murdered, and the police know instantly who the killer is because they have witness reports, DNA evidence. They know it's him 100%, but when they arrest him, they find out he has an airtight alibi. He has witness reports, DNA evidence proving that he was nowhere near the crime scene, and the police are left to try and figure out how can he be in two places at once. That's what it's about. Then for an anticipated book, I chose the book Wranglestone by Darren Charlton. I don't know anything about this, but I know that it features zombies, what I would class as a dark, scary monster. So that's what I chose for that. And the final question is not really a prompt, but a bonus question, and that is pick 2 books you think are relatively unheard of and deserve more recognition. I obviously am going to say my darling series, my Nemesis. I love the Nemesis series. They are some amazing stories. It is a quartet of books, and it's very dark actually. It features a young boy who wakes up without any memory of who he is, and then he finds a dead body, and the police are automatically blaming him, so he ends up on the run trying to prove his innocence but having no memory of anything before the moment he woke up, as well as being chased by a man known as the Dark Man. That's pretty much what that story is about. I've chosen this book because I think it is relatively unheard of. I'm the only person that ever seems to speak about it, but there are many people out there that when I speak about it always comment below saying, oh, that sounds really interesting, I think I might give that a go, and then no one ever gives it a go. So can someone please just give it a go for me? Just once. Just one person. If one person gives this freaking series a go, I swear I will be the happiest person in the world. And finally, another series that I have spoken about quite a few times here, and that is the Numbers trilogy by Rachel Ward. The first book, Numbers, the second is Numbers 2, The Chaos, and the third one is Numbers 3, Infinity. And this is actually quite a dark series because it follows a young girl that can see the dates people will die just by looking in their eyes. And one day she realizes that everybody around her has the same date and something is going to happen to kill all of these people. And because she has this knowledge and tries to save people, she ends up the prime suspect. And each story, because it's obviously a trilogy, each one of the books gets darker and darker and darker, and I love the entire series so much. Definitely due a reread, have been for so long. But again, it's also one of these series everyone says, oh, that sounds really interesting, I really fancy giving that a go. And no one ever does. So give it a go, please. I would really appreciate it. Right, that, I admit, was hell. I need to figure out a new way to actually film videos because I've realised sitting on the floor does not work for me anymore. Now I'm 25, I'm getting old. I can't handle it. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you do this tag. I haven't tagged people. Right, okay. I am going to tag Brooke from Brooke's Books, Jade from Paperback to Hardback, Lauren from Lauren's Library, Kira from Kira Can Read, Celeste from The World of Reading, Robbie from Andy's Nose Stuck in a Book, Claire from Books with Claire, Sophie from Sophie Snow. Is that everyone? Probably. And that is it from me, guys. I will see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
SafeMusicList.com. Royalty-free music for marketing and promotional videos.